Welcome back to another episode of Cash Flow Conversations. I'm excited today. I have an old friend, a phenomenal financial advisor in with the studio today, Marc Tomei of Hindsight Financial. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Matt. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. So, quick background on Mark. Mark was in the Navy, so thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
After he got out of the Navy, he went into consulting for a little while, started to learn a little bit about money, and in the early 2000s got involved with mortgages. What a great time to be involved with mortgages from 2002 to 2007. And then got into the financial planning industry, probably because the market did a little thing there in 2008, 2009, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, that was a welcome to the industry party for me.
Yeah,
Really enjoyed that.
which inspired Mark to get involved in the financial planning because he saw too many people getting money taken away unnecessarily and out of their own control because of market conditions. So for the last 15 years, Mark's been helping clients understand how retirement works and having his retirees have predictable income streams that Wall Street and the IRS can't take away. So, Mark, it's good to have you here, man.
You're gonna have to edit that. You froze up on me.
It froze on my end too. So, Mark, it's good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Good, man. All right, so I want to go quick background. You went from Navy serviceman to consulting to essentially a sales gig in the mortgage industry. What did that? How did you get there?
Sure. Yeah, that was an interesting pathway, and everybody's got their own path, but that was definitely mine. I was in the Navy. I was serving on submarines, nuclear submarines, and that was an interesting start for me because literally at age 17, I'm learning nuclear power and how nuclear propulsion systems work and how engineering systems tie together. And it was a real wake-up call for me, and kind of surprising to see that the quality of training in the military is second to none. Literally taking teenagers and turning them into competent nuclear power plant operators in the fleet. So that was my wake-up call into all things complex and systems knowledge. On a submarine, you have to learn all the different systems and how they work together and tie together. And it's complicated, but we helped make it easier for our students, and I eventually became an instructor. And for my last 3 years, I was teaching little nukes how to become big nukes and go to the fleet and operate power plants.
Wow.
So I had the benefit of being trained by some of the best trainers in the world. The Navy and their nuclear power program is very impressive, and it taught me how to view things as a system. And when I first got out of the Navy, you mentioned consulting. At this time, Yahoo was kind of new on the scene, and when I was getting out of the Navy, I remember typing technical training, Michigan. Like my consulting work was bringing technology and workers together, primarily for the big three. So if a plant put in new technology, a new piece of equipment, new software, anything that was new technology, we would come in and we would come alongside the end users and help them come up to speed on the new technology so that they could perform their functions.
Wow.
So that really built in me the heart of the teacher. And I think that's important because everybody comes at this business from their own place. But I really came at it from the heart of a teacher. The Navy really showed me how to take complicated systems, break them down, speak clearly about them, and that led me into consulting. So the whole concept of working with people who feel bullied and underdogged by the system with complications in their world, we would help them build clarity from that. And that's where I created a clear money framework for retirement. So when I was going through the consulting business, there was a period of time where all of my projects were financial in nature. I was working with each of the big three, but they were all financial in nature. And that really had an effect on me. For some reason, I just found my home. I really enjoyed it. Around that time, I was looking to refinance. And I remember so clearly, it was a Saturday afternoon.
What year was that? That was '02?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one might have been '01 because '02 is when I actually made some moves. But here's a guy sitting at my kitchen table talking to me about, my goals, my dreams, my finances. And I'm, this is a mortgage. He's talking to me about my goals, and, he just approached it completely different from what I'd ever seen. And it also had an impact on me. And I sat and I asked him, I said, how do you like your job? He absolutely loved it. He raved about it. I get to work with clients and help them build their credit, help them figure out mortgage situations, real estate. And that was just really attractive to me. So I said to him, can you get me in? And that's kind of where it all started.
Were you nervous at all? I mean, is there a salary as a mortgage broker?
No. When we get into this world, when I was in a consulting world, I had, a regular paycheck and a corner office, with a nice view. But it wasn't enough for me. I can remember being involved in projects where my counterparts in the project might not have had the same knowledge or skill or whatever they brought to the party, but their pay was determined by how long they had been there. And you just had your regular raises. So you could almost tell at that time how long people were there based on how much money they were making. And that one didn't sit with me. And I can remember specifically a team member playing solitaire on his computer, and I'm watching him. Now, in the Navy, that's, you're always driving, you're always pushing. To see somebody doing like that, it really got under my skin. So when I made that jump, I went from salary, comfort, and I went into the abyss, with straight commission. You eat what you kill. And at the time I had 2 young kids, wife, mortgage, and the whole thing. So I could say that for the most part, everybody was fairly supportive, which was good because I was taking a heck of a leap. But it was a great leap. It was foundational, and it's kind of changed the course of my world. So,
Do you regret it at all?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I can't say enough about my feelings of independence, and at the end of the day, I have me to blame for my successes or my failures, and that's where I feel comfortable. I don't want to have to look at someone else's situation to determine my outcome. I've got a fierce independent streak in me, so that's kind of what made me take off in that direction. So when I was doing mortgages, I ended up getting into supervisory level positions, and what I found was that was taking me further and further away from clients, working every day with people. That's what I enjoyed about it. You start talking about profit and loss and spreadsheets, and that's where you start to lose me. I really enjoy, I enjoy working with the people. That's the reason we do this business. So at that time, I was getting restless, and I was working in a team with other financial professionals. So we would have a financial advisor, we would have an attorney, we would have an insurance person, we would have everybody that you would want to be a team that kind of loosely just worked together. So I had a network of advisors that I worked with. And, on one bad day, I can remember saying to the financial advisor, seems like you have a lot of access into your client's world. And they said, when we do this right, the clients, they rely on me for every step. And he has a very important role in their world. And for me, that was important. And I was looking at the situation where, I help people, but I have a pretty limited scope in where I interact. Whereas the advisor kind of had carte blanche to work with the clients. And that was very impressive to me. So similar story. I said, can you get me in? And off we went. I got securities licensed. I got insurance licensed. And I went to work. And I learned a lot about the industry in the first few years. I wasn't the 20-year-old kid starting from scratch. I was 40 something with kids and needed to have success. There was no plan B.
Yeah.
So
you got into this at we're going to date you here. How old were you when you got licensed with your securities?
42. I'm sorry, 32. I got my math wrong on that one.
Yeah, 32. That's what I thought. Okay, so
32.
you're in the 30s with kids, and this is like when you're supposed to start to be successful, and you made a career change.
Yeah, yanked the rug right out from under everyone. So, to your question, is there any regret? Again, one of the most foundational decisions in my world, and I wouldn't have done anything different.
No regrets. I
No
love it.
regrets.
I love it. So since 2007, so that's 15 years now in the financial planning type world.
Yeah.
You've had some changes here too, because I don't want to speak for you, but you used to be securities licensed and now you're not. What
Yeah.
walk me through that whole transition?
Yeah, that's, you know, the word financial advisor or the term financial advisor has so many meanings and so many different types of people place that title on themselves. It can be confusing for people trying to figure things out. And when I first went into the business, I was doing everything. I was building portfolios, I was doing insurance, I was doing retirement planning, I was doing college planning. You know, at that stage, working with anybody, who would say yes is
Yeah.
kind of how you got to get started. But what I started seeing over and over and over is that even when I would work with clients who had had advisors for long periods of time, you know, somebody who's been with, and I won't name a specific Morgan Dean Witter Stanley kind of a portfolio, and as I said, when I came into this business, the world was getting rocked. 2008 was happening. We were still trying to figure out which end was up.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was that even these folks who had had long-term advisory relationships, their plan crumbled when the first market loss hit. And that imprinted on me because when you look at retirement, you really don't get any do-overs. You get one shot to build it. And what I was seeing over and over and over again, people being frustrated by what they had built for themselves. They thought it was going to work one way. They figured out it worked the other. I saw people that had their incomes slashed because of the market. They watched their assets cut in half because of the correction there. And for many, that was a end of ball game. And if that happens to somebody, on day one of retirement, that's life changing, and you don't get that back. So that really led me to focus on the art of building a retirement income stream. People hear the word ROI and they think it's return on investment. To some, it is. We use it as reliability of income, because really, when you talk about retirement, there's a lot of things to talk about, but job one is truly to build a reliable income stream that can take you through all of the cycles that the world will deliver. And for
Yeah.
many people, that's a 30-year window. If you retire at age 65 and both spouses are alive, there's a really good chance that one of them is going to see 95.
Hmm.
And for many, that's their biggest risk factor, because they have to take a pool of money that they've cobbled together during their 30 to 40 years of working, and then hope that that pile of income carries them for the next 30 years through retirement. And the math on that doesn't always work really well. There really hasn't been a society who has done it that way. So what we're finding is just an entire generation of people who are showing up to retirement's doorstep just woefully unprepared for what's going to happen. And when you talk to them, they think they have a plan, but when you dig a little deeper, they have a portfolio. And that's kind of what the nature of their relationship with their advisor had been. It's the portfolio. It's, did I make 12% this year? Did I lose 5%? And those types of things are okay when they don't lead to an immediate result. The problem hits when you go to retirement and now you have to rely on that pile of money to be your income stream. Now a 20% market cut means everything to you. Now a tax increase means everything to you.
Yeah, tax increase can crush it. The market dropping 20% can crush it. How much responsibility does the advisor have on that retirement account?
Oh, I think he has a lot of responsibility when it comes to how something is built. And I don't know that the industry has prepared and taught advisors well enough for what that looks like. They use things like risk.
Let me ask you a different way. How can an advisor put someone in a position to lose 20% the year before they retire?
Because they're not paying attention to it. Because they're
What's the
building,
reason?
they're not watching it year in and year out. They're not reviewing and having a
Let me see it.
relationship with
So,
their
so
clients.
these people call themselves financial advisors who
Hmm.
gather assets in qualified plans like a retirement account.
Yep.
They're not watching the stocks and bonds go up and down every day. You mean they're meeting with clients and somebody else is managing the portfolio and they're just getting a fee?
There's a lot of that for sure. But again, if that's the purpose, is to just attract money and build portfolios with them, then that's what you get. And portfolios of securities go up when things are good, but they go down when things are bad. And when you're talking to somebody about their risk tolerance, the industry uses a risk tolerance questionnaire to ask people what their thoughts and feelings are about risk. That's a pretty sterile exercise compared to if you retire on day one with $1 million in your IRA or 401k, 2008 hits you, now you're dealing with $500,000 on day one of retirement. And the math of that is when you lose 50% of your portfolio, you have to make 100% return to get back to where you started. A lot of times people don't picture that one right. If you lose 50% one year and then gain 50% the next year, they might see you at even. But I would ask you to check the math on that. You're going to be down 25%.
And imagine expecting to have growth over those 2 or 3 years. You're going to have to get more than 100% to make up for what you expected.
Absolutely. These paper-based financial plans are all based on a series of assumptions, and that plan is only good the day you ink it. After that, everything's changing. So, really it comes down to, it's not necessarily planning. I don't look at it as planning because you just have no idea what's coming. I look for it as structuring. Everybody has resources, cash, investments, real estate. How you hold those, how you have that structured and built, and where your equity lives largely determines the ride you're going to have. What taxes you're going to pay, what risks you face, the watch outs and gotchas that happen along the way. And these retirees with portfolios but no plan, when 2008 hit, they found themselves in a really bad position because now they had a fraction of their assets that they started with, but they had no real opportunity to go back into the workforce and earn the kind of money that they were earning during their peak years. So what you find is it's very hard to replace a standard of living with the existing assets that you've pulled together as a household, as a family. So there's different challenges in different segments of the population, but for the most part, focusing on building that reliable income stream is job one. We have to know that you've got the money to take you through retirement, through the good, bad, and the ugly, because nobody
I
gets.
hear you say that's more important than the asset values, the income plan.
Oh yeah, the asset values all live on paper. You don't get to go spend an asset value because it's on a statement. I think we get really esoteric when we start talking about assets, and it's cocktail conversation. What's your portfolio? Here's my portfolio. You're up, you're down. At the end of the day, you need money, and you need money to be delivered at the point in time of need without risk and confiscation. There are plenty of places along the way in how people typically do retirement where the government, the financial institutions, the other professionals, everybody gets a kick at your portfolio. And depending on where you live and how you structure your income plan, you might be the fourth or the fifth person in line for your own money. And when people don't think about that while they're building it, there's never really a need to look into it. Where you start to really find the rubber meeting the road is when somebody is no longer working. Now they have to file manual tax returns. Nothing's withheld from a paycheck. It's just, here's your taxes and here's the tax bill that you owe. And a lot of times for people, that's their first time seeing that. We tend to play the game of withhold money from pay, and then at the end of the year, you either get a nice refund or you owe money. In the world of the self-employed or the retired, where there's no W-2 paycheck, you do your taxes at the end of the year and you figure out what your bill is. That's reality. I've heard people celebrate that they got a $3,000 tax refund. And, to me, I understand the joy and the giddiness of it, but it's your own money, and the government held on to it.
Spend a second on that. What do you mean it's their own money?
This is money that you went to work, traded your talents, blood, sweat, and tears for $1. You take that dollar and you put it into your retirement plan. For most people, that's a 401k through their work. For some, it's a IRA, and there are different products for different markets, but they all kind of operate on that same 401k type of approach, where you earn the dollar and you can put it into the account right away and you don't have to pay taxes on it. That's the attractiveness of that plan. The downside to that plan is when you go to actually use the money, now you have to pay the tax bill. And for most people, they are deferring and delaying in today's environment where we have relatively low taxes. It doesn't feel like it, but if we look at the long-term history of how this government has taxed its citizens, we're in a relatively low period of time, and it's really poised to go the other way fast. And that, for a lot of people, is going to be an immediate wake-up call, because for many, they haven't paid any taxes on their retirement dollars. So now if you watch taxes go from 20% to 30%, there is nothing they can do to avoid that.
Go from 20% to what?
30.
Oh, yeah.
Just as an example. I mean, when I talk to people about their
Hold on, real
thoughts.
quick. You mentioned getting a tax refund. I was curious about that. What do you mean because people get excited about getting a tax refund?
Sure. When you earn your money, you have an opportunity. If you're in a W-2 salary type job, there's this concept of withholding taxes. So when you make your paycheck, they will withhold the taxes and you get what's left, and that's the net. Well, how much they withhold is a function of what you tell them to withhold. So I'm either married or I'm single. I have this many exemptions. And that determines how little or how much is withheld from pay. So if you think about that, that's a series of loans, a series of kicking some financial obligation out into the future. And when people focus on today, it's how many dollars have I gotten back from the government is some sort of a measure of success, and it's absolutely wrong. What we do is at the end of the year, you do your tax bill, you go through your sources of income and how they're taxed, you go through your expenses and what you're allowed to deduct, and at the end of the day, you get a final bottom line number. If you've withheld more of that than, if you've withheld that much or more, you're going to get a refund at the end of the year because they've held on to your money for the entire year.
So it's not a refund, it's a return.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
man, it's too much.
You got it. You got it. I owed the government X number of dollars this year, and I set aside Y number. Well, the difference between those two numbers.
I could have bought crypto with that money.
What's that?
I could have bought crypto with all that money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I find that what I have found that the major source of stress and pain for the retirees that are hitting retirement now all comes down to where they have held their assets, where their equity lives, where their treasure is stored. And for most families, in today's way of doing things, most people hold their wealth in two places: their qualified retirement plan at work and their home. If they own a home, that home equity is also another very popular place to store treasure. As I said earlier, where your money is, where it lives, determines the ride you take. So when 2008 happened, people watched a series of things occur in their world. Number one, their retirement account was cut nearly in half. If you're not 59 and a half years old, you can't access that money without penalty. And in some cases, you can't access it all. Your employer will control how much of your money you can access from that plan. Loans might be available. That was a symptom that I saw a lot of. When you start seeing 401k loans across the board, that's a good indication that something is being built incorrectly. 2008 hit, their portfolio gets cut in half. The other thing that got cut is the value of their home. And for many of us, that was the first time. Now, I grew up in a world where real estate went up 5% a year, period. You
Yeah.
just assumed that real estate always went up. Well, here was a case where the whole world went on sale. Real estate was down, the market was down, and our industry is kind of unique in that when we have big sales like that, nobody shows up. If we were selling Beanie Babies for half price, you'd see people lined up around the building. But when the market goes on sale 50% off, they're having a hard time finding buyers.
Everybody's scared.
And yeah, a lot of that was fear, and a lot of that was they didn't have access to the money.
So how do you fix that? Because I think the biggest mistake that someone who's in their 30s and 40s is funding the wrong stuff. And I could go on for a long time, but I want to hear your opinion on what does that look like? What's that big mistake?
Well, as I said, for most people, they've built the majority of their wealth in an account that they can't access. And not only that, they can't determine or figure out what they're actually going to owe on the other side. I can generally get people to believe and say that taxes are going to go up. I ask the question, do you believe it will take more money or less money to run the government 20 years from today than it does now? That's usually a better way to ask that question to get to the answer that's closer to reality, and the fact that, yes, this is going to be the trend. So when you have a situation where somebody has locked up all of their money, they are in a position that is not enviable when a market correction comes. And again, that's what most people saw in 2008. When they saw their values cut in half and they didn't have access to the money, for some people, they had phenomenal opportunities as a result of what happened. They just had no capital to take advantage of it. And again, we're all in different boats, but we face the same storm, I like to say, because everybody kind of lives in the same world with the same basic rules. The decimal point might be in a different place from one group to the next, but everybody has their own concerns. In 2008, you may recall, the banks froze lending. They weren't even lending money to good customers. So we had a complete freeze of the system with assets going down, access to capital restricted to the precious few, the wealthy. And anytime something like that happens, the wealthy will come in. They will take advantage of all of those opportunities because they could, and their position improves and you get squeezed out. And this is what we see in the middle class. This is what we see in the lower to mid tiers of middle class Americans that are out there just trying to.
They're taught to do what they're supposed to do. So they follow what they're told. And then when the chaos happens, they're the first ones to get in trouble and have no access to help.
Absolutely.
Unless the government, and if you're at that level, it's like, that's not good at all. That's not help.
Yeah, I always tell people, from the time I was little, I was told, save your money, put your money in the bank. I remember my little deposit record book. My mom would take me to the bank. I would deposit my $4 or whatever I'd earned, and I remember making that entry in the logbook, and I felt great about it. So their advice to us was to give us your money, let us manage it as long as possible, and we're going to try to give it back to you as little as possible. And that's not a fun game for the consumer.
No.
So, and then I asked the question: is that what banks do with their money? When I talk to clients about these types of principles, I mean, these are foundational principles because, in general, I tend to see the world different from most other financial advisors. Where again, their focus is on the portfolio, and that portfolio is the plan. I've seen that blow up too many times to ever make that my business model. So what I help people do is I help people figure out where their resources are, how that game board works. When we play money during life, it has rules, it has moves, it acts like a game board, almost like Monopoly. And I find that most people are out there playing the game without a game board. They don't have a direction. They don't have a specific plan. They just want to see their money go up. If you ask most people, what's your plan or what is your investment method? For most, it's really gambling. I'm putting money here and I'm hoping it's going to turn out. And for many people, they can't shoulder the risk of it not working out. And I see people taking on risk that they definitely should not be taking on. They can't really afford to take it on. This risk tolerance questionnaire approach, I don't believe prepares people. If you were to lose half of your money, it's one thing to try to talk about it on paper, but put yourself in that position. Day one of retirement, you've worked your whole life, your whole career for this day. I'm kicking off retirement, and this is my next phase. And then 2008 comes and takes half of your money away from you.
Well, you know what it is, man. People just think it's not going to happen to them because they're conservative. They're in a 60-40 portfolio. It can't happen to me.
No, absolutely. We tend to think we're bulletproof until we start seeing other people suffer. That's usually
because when you're watching it go down, it becomes a fire. What's the saying? Fire drill, or it's a run. When the market starts crashing, everyone's like, "I got to get out," and it just compounds the problem. If they have to notice.
That's just another example of how traditional advice and reality are at odds. Everybody knows we're supposed to buy low and sell high, right? That's investing 101. Yeah, but is that what we do? And the answer is no. When you look at what happened in '08, and it's not the only time that happened, it happens throughout history, and every 10 and every 20-year period in the market has some form of massive correction. Yeah. How that correction treats you is a function of where your money lives and where you've got it situated.
Are you a fan of annuities?
I am. And I say that to say that the annuities aren't good or bad. They just are. They are what they are. And an annuity is some place that you put your money if you are afraid of living too long. So if you think of the perfect hedge, life insurance is what people buy when they're afraid of dying too soon. Annuities are what you buy when you're afraid of living too long. Mm-hmm. Because an insurance company will promise to pay you as long as you're alive. That gets back to when you talk about reliability of income. When you sit down and examine where is somebody's income coming from, the three legs of the traditional stool is you've got your retirement plan from work, your Social Security, and then your personal savings. So that's a typical three-leg retirement strategy. Now, Social Security, you can feel pretty good that check is always going to come in. I know we like to talk about it's going to go away, it's going to be bankrupt. At the end of the day, the government can print money. So they're not going to let go of that obligation in our current form. So you have pretty reliable income from Social Security. Your employer-sponsored plan is what you do with it. It's where you've directed the money. See, it used to be, the system was you'd work for a company for 30 or 35 years, you'd get a gold watch, you'd retire, and you'd die 2.8 years later. That's what retirement looked like in our grandparents and earlier generations. What we found is, over time, as more access became available to the markets and the stock market, and things became a little bit more complicated, companies suddenly had lots of places that they could put their money, and in most cases, they were putting money in other places than funding their own pension obligations. So in a lot of ways, the corporations were just as guilty as the consumers for not saving money for known expenses in the future when they have to pay out retirees. So we actually found some pensions that got blown up. We found a lot of municipal pensions that were just simply cut. Where you might be expecting $4,000 a month, all of a sudden it was $1,200 a month with no way to change it. You don't have a say. So it was that type of situation where somebody said, I cannot believe it works this way. That is not how I was told this was going to work. That's where hindsight is 2020. If I could just know then what I know today, I would be in a completely different world. Yeah. And that's the type of passion we bring to our clients, because I know what happens when you build it wrong. I've watched people. I see what they go through. This is not all sterile dollars and cents. This can be stress. This can be misery. In retirement, it's supposed to be time of life to enjoy. Sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor, paying your dues, right? But for somebody who's built that entire strategy on a pre-tax 401k, what they find is they haven't paid their dues yet. And the dues are due. And that time frame of paying those taxes gets compressed, and the government's in control of it. And it's not a really fun schedule.
No.
They will get their money from you.
And this is how you came up with your business name, Hindsight Financial.
Hindsight Financial came from that exact reaction from one client after another after another. I didn't realize it worked this way. I wouldn't have built it this way had I really known, or if somebody would have really explained it to me. You know, for most people, they have somebody that comes into their office and talks about the great 401k, and you could put money in there, and then you won't pay taxes on that money till in the future when you're at a lower tax rate. That's the biggest myth of maybe any of them that I have seen financially, that you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. If you've built your income to come from a 401k, pension, or IRA, plus Social Security, you will pay taxes forever. And what you'll find is you're going to pay a lot of taxes that were completely unnecessary, completely voluntary, just because you chose to put money where you did.
I think that's a really good way to explain how that company name came to be, because it's interesting. Hindsight Financial. What would you do differently now that you know, if you had the ability to look back? And someone who wants to go, I haven't been through it yet, but I want to avoid it, which is it takes someone with a lot of integrity to even ask that question, because you have to think, I am not bulletproof in order to even ask that question, which a lot of people don't. So it's a good way to view that. If I want to avoid the mistakes of the people before me, what would I do? So how would people get a hold of you? I'm going to have a link on anyone listening, a link in the profile in the description of Marc's website. Any other way that they should get a hold of you?
It's hindsightfinancial.com, HINDSIGHT financial.com. And you can also check out my web-based learning at sixfigureretiree.com.
Nice. Marc, when are you writing a book? Because Lord knows you have enough to say.
The book is always in process. The chapters are being written each and every day. When I will assemble them and make them a product, I would say in the next 2 years.
All right, everybody. He said it. 2 years. We got to hold him accountable. I think 2 years. 2 years, dude. I could be. You know how much it can happen in 2 years? I think you're giving yourself too much time. I say 6 months, but who am I?
There we have it. All right, 6 months.
6 months. Marc's gonna have a book, Hindsight Financial. We'll come up with a subtitle later. Marc, thank you so much for being here, man. Again, we'll have a description, or we'll have links in the description below to get in touch with Marc. Anything?
Matt, thanks for having me on.
Any final thoughts here, man?
I think we make things too difficult. I think we make things too complicated. I think work with somebody you trust, communicate on a very clear level, make sure expectations are understood, and it's a long-term relationship. Treat it like any other relationship. Has to be communication, has to be trust, has to be clear objectives. That's the part of this business I have a passion for. So if you feel like you've been beat up by the system, the market hasn't treated you fairly, you're not quite sure where to go from here, my Hindsight will point you in the right direction.
Love it. Marc, thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Matt.
See you, buddy.